The other traditional topic for the second Sunday of the Easter season comes from the reading we have just heard from John's Gospel. The reading is unusual in being present in all 3 lectionary years, so those compiling the lectionary presumably thought it was important. Though the reading describes 2 appearances of Jesus to his disciples, we mostly remember the reaction of the somewhat pejoratively named Doubting Thomas, who doesn't buy into the whole resurrection thing when he is told about it by his fellow apostles, until he sees the risen Christ appear before him, when he emphatically declares his change of mind, exclaiming, "My Lord and my God." Now this moniker is unfair, I think, because he's hardly the only doubter in the larger Holy Week and Easter story. Peter, of course, famously declares he's not a follower of Jesus at all the night before the crucifixion, demonstrating doubt, in my eyes, in Jesus' overall plan. Throughout the Bible, there are those who doubt God's plan for them. Sarah, who we talked about laughing with joy in the first talk, as I said earlier in her story, had laughed off rather mockingly the idea of God being able to give her a child, doubting it was possible even for God at her age. Moses was skeptical that he was suitable to lead the Israelites. All of these people still played a part in God's story. For me, though, these reactions make the story much more relevant to me. I see the people reacting much as I could imagine myself reacting in a similar circumstance. Doubt and skepticism are important human thoughts and feelings, which we need to use judiciously today to cut through the thickets and brambles of misinformation, propaganda, and fake news with which we are constantly bombarded. Doubt is also a part of our faith journey. Indeed, when starting out as a local preacher, as I did, learners are essentially encouraged to explore their doubts about how God is really calling them to service, whether becoming a worship leader or local preacher is really the best way to answer that call. There is a process of discernment through prayer, reflection, and conversation with fellow Christians. Doubt often feels like a less than positive experience, but Jesus can and does use our doubts that we might gain greater understanding of our world, ourselves, and our faith, if we are willing to confront those doubts and journey through them with him. But that's enough about Thomas and his doubts. I'm more interested today in something else that Thomas had to say in John's Gospel. Earlier in chapter 14, during what we call the farewell discourse, Jesus was talking to his disciples after the Last Supper. At least, I hope it was after the Last Supper, and they didn't have to wait until he was finished talking in giving his very long monologue before eating, a bit like one of those weddings where the speeches just goes on and you never get to eat the food. In his long monologue, Jesus is talking about the future, saying some well-known passage phrases like, "My Father's house has many rooms. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. You know the way to the place where I am going." Thomas, though, interrupts him with the question, "Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way?" A perceptive question, I think, showing that insightful, sometimes skeptical questions are maybe a part of Thomas's personality. I think also a question relevant to the troubles we are facing today. It feels often today, especially, that we don't know the way forward, or what might be happening in the next months, or even days. Whatever we might have had planned for 2020 has, or soon will be, probably, thrown out by the social distancing required to deal with the pandemic we confront. But the Easter joy we celebrate in Laughing Sunday comes from our trust and hope in the God of Easter. We know that this too will pass. And what will the world look like then? What is the place that we are going to? And here the doubt of Thomas should be used wisely. Do we need to go back to a world of massive inequality? Do we need to go back to a world where the poor and vulnerable are left to fend for themselves? Do we need to go back to exploiting our planet and its resources to the point of abuse? We have an opportunity in this moment, when even the most ardent free market capitalists recognize the need for intervention, to use that intervention to realign our world with the values of God's kingdom. What does that world look like? In between binge-watching series on Netflix, virtual quarantinis, and perfecting our sourdough bread baking skills, maybe we as Christians can spend some time reflecting on what our vision is for that world, and what we can do to make it happen. The crisis has given us a glimpse of how things might be different. The way scientists around the world have been working together, collaborating to measure and understand the virus, stop its spread, and hopefully find a vaccine. The way those on the front lines of care have selflessly put the needs of the sick ahead of their own. The blue skies where previously there had only been polluted grey smog, showing what is possible if we commit to a different vision. Now that's quite a big task. I like organising my tasks at work and at home in a list on my Apple phone so that I get the thrill of ticking a task off my list as I go along, and helps give me structure to my day, especially in current circumstances under lockdown. Unfortunately though, changing the world is not going to be accomplished just by ticking off a few small tasks on a list in a few days or weeks at home, but it does start with thinking about what small changes we can make to contribute to the larger transformation we need. I invite you to reflect while listening to the next song called Everyday God, to reflect on areas of your daily life where you can make small changes to align your life with God's values.